Now our goal is to learn how to complete squares, but we're going to do this in steps. So in part 1, we learned how to use the special product, which is a plus or minus b the whole squared is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. By using the special product, we can expand an expression of this sort, x minus 4 the whole squared, quickly to x squared minus 8x plus 16 without using the FOIL method or the long multiplication method. We used the special product to quickly come up with this expression, which is the quadratic expression. In part 2, what we did was we were given a quadratic expression and we learned how to change that, if possible, to a whole squared. So if it was a perfect square, we were able to write it as x, in this case, x minus 7 the whole squared. And in this example, x squared minus 16x plus 49, we figured out that it almost looks like a perfect square, but it's not, because the middle term is not negative 16x, and therefore it was not a perfect square. Now in part 3, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you an expression. Let's say x squared minus 6x. Okay. And I'm going to ask you, what is the number that we need to write here in order to make it a perfect square? Okay. So this is how we look at it. We have an x squared. We know what the pattern of a perfect square looks like. It has to look like x squared minus twice the product of x and the next term plus the square of the second. So in order to write a negative 6, we already have the x here. Note that the number that fits in here, in order to make it a negative 6x, is a 3. So negative 6x is the same as the negative of 2 times x, which is the first term, times 3. So in order to make this a perfect square, what I need to do is square the 3. And that would make it an x minus 3 the whole squared. Let's look at another example. Suppose we have an x squared minus 4x plus blank. What is the number that would make this expression a perfect square? So what is it that's going to make it like an x minus something the whole squared? And we need to fill in this blank as well. So let's look at this. In order for this expression to be a perfect square, it has to look like the square of the first term minus twice the product of the first term and the second term, and then we would square the second term. So let's stop and think. We have a negative 4x here. A negative 2 times a 2 would make it a negative 4, and we have the x, so that would make it a negative 4x. So this is the first term, this is the first term and the second term, and here we want this to be the square of the second term, which means the 2 from here fits in. So we have an x squared minus twice the product of x and 2 plus the square of 2, which is a 4, which will make this an x minus 2 the whole squared. The minus comes from the middle term. Let's look at another example. X squared minus 18x plus what would make it a perfect square? So let's think about it. X squared minus twice the product of the first term and the second term would have to be negative x. So in order to make this equal to negative 18, we have a negative 2 times 9, which would make it a negative 18. And that's what I need to add here in order to make it a perfect square. So then that would be an x minus 9 the whole squared. So we would have to add an 81 in order to make it a perfect square. So let's look at each of these examples. So what do we have here? A 6. What did we square? It's the half of 6, which really is 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Let's look at the next one. We had a 4 here. What did we square? It was a 2. How do we think of this 2? We could think of it as 4, which was originally the number there, divided by 2, which is 2, and then we square it. Let's look at the next example. We had an 18 here. And what did we do? We took 18 divided by 2, which makes it a 9, and then we squared it. So that's 18 divided by 2, which is equal to a 9. Now let's see if this works. X squared minus 14x plus what would make it a perfect square? Now I'm going to take a shortcut. We're going to say, okay, x squared minus 14x plus, I take this number, divide by 2, which makes it a 7, and I square it. And this will make it a perfect square because this is x squared minus twice x times 7 plus 7 squared, which would be x minus 7 the whole squared.